All right. So, for some reason, this thing has a seriously big lag to it. Super huge. Trying to figure out how to reduce this lag um, or delay because it's like super late. It's like super late. So, either way, thank you guys so much for tuning in to to Cosmo's Astrogem talk show. Just having a little breakfast, and as I was trying to figure out why I could not like start the stream just straight out. It looks like everything got reconfigured, so I do apologize for being late again this week, but I also appreciate you guys being here. Let's go ahead and get started. So, what are we talking about today? We're talking about string theory and astrology. Now, first and foremost, I'm gonna just say straight up, I'm not a scientist, okay, and nor am I someone that has like adequate background with string theory. I have done research on my own, looked up some stuff about it, but I don't have any sort of real like science-based background as to understanding the depths of string theory. But I kind of get the gist of it, which I from what I understood is just pretty much the theory that things are made of all molecules, are made up of molecules, right? That's what I kind of got the idea from. The reason why I wanted to talk about this was actually something interesting that happened to me over Christmas. Went over to some friend's house and just started chilling, hanging out, and talking. And I was describing to them a theory in my head that would connect all the way back up to atoms, right? I was just talking about it, and I actually even mentioned this to my dad. It was earlier this year, and I was like, Dad, what if we are literally molecules that have just been reincarnated a million times? If energy doesn't die, if energy doesn't dissipate or go away, then perhaps we live on. We just don't know it because we keep transforming into different things. And so my dad was like, that's an interesting theory. We'll come back to that later. And then I bring it up again on Christmas. And then a friend of mine was able to identify a real theory based off of what I was thinking. And in no way, shape, or form am I saying that this is some sort of signature for me to be right or for me to convey that I know everything or that I have some sort of all-knowing. I know that I don't have that. And I know that I'm not going to try and sit here and say that I do. As a matter of fact, one of the things I'm going to say right off the bat is that going in further into this talk, I won't probably have as much information as I would like to have about string theory because I'm just coming to the realization that that's a real theory. Like, that's something that exists. However, I do know some degree what string theory is, and then I want to talk about how that's kind of elevated my level of understanding with astrology. Because string theory, in my eyes, is very similar to astrology. Everything's connected. Everything has a point or has a connecting dot. And it's just like, with string theory, it kind of gives me a playground to actually explore that, to see where that can go. I do know that string theory doesn't solve or doesn't prove exactly how we came from, the universe. Like the Big Bang. If that was really what happened, well, then explain how that Big Bang theory happened. So, like, there's a lot of things that has disproved, well, not necessarily disproved string theory, but just there's some parts of the string theory that hasn't really shown where we come from or how that has anything to do with the creation of the universe. The thing that it does connect to, however, that they have said works is through lineage, is through where we've come from, right? In our DNA. It's in there. And I've watched seminars and I've watched talks and I've read some articles online to kind of get a better understanding of what string theory is trying to grasp. What's up, Ravynne girl? Ravynne Fire is in the building. What's up, girl? What's up, girl? How you doing? But yes, so why are we talking about string theory and what does this have to do with astrology, right? Simple. If string theory is all about connecting the dots, so is astrology. So astrology does the same thing. Except the thing is with astrology is that they kind of use concepts, ideas, stories, mythological creatures, or characters to kind of describe a certain energy, to kind of create a field of emphasis or empathy, to relate, to understand. And from what I can understand from astrology, is that when I use string theory, or I use concepts like string theory, I can really make an interesting story, or I could see how a story can be woven out of it. Right? There's something that's out of this kind of platform that gives string theory its flair. But it literally is all about connecting the dots. For me, it's literally about seeing where everything kind of has a line. Now, one of the things I like to say about string theory, or at least in my head, what I can conceptualize from string theory, is two things. Vibration is an algorithm, so is mathematical equations. Math it can be an algorithm. They can be reconfigured to being an algorithm. So can vibration now. And I feel like while vibration is the skin, the meat, the flesh, the mathematical equations are the bone. Okay? It's the cartilage. It's the thing that makes that shit up. And I feel like when we use them together with astrology, it can honestly kind of do a lot of weaving through. And it's interesting what it kind of comes out with. So that's just kind of like my thing with string theory right now. It's just like, what makes this theory so compelling to me? Why am I drawn to it? And what do I get out of talking about something that I literally just heard about a week ago? Well, the reason why I really wanted to talk about it was due to a post I made earlier this week, and how everything's just interwoven and interconnected. Like, it's just, there's so many layers to things. And when it came to astrology and even tarot, I noticed that like with the idea, just something to play around with, that we are playing with dimensions. We are playing with them all the time. We don't even notice it. That's just my concept, though. That doesn't mean it's fact. But in my eyes and how I kind of operate my world, which I need to be getting better at anyway, is that everything is a portal, everything is dimension. And like, for instance, talking to you guys right now, I'm tapping into an element or a dimension. Right now, my feedback, my information, what I'm saying, that's being delayed right now. Like, it's not like it's on sync, it's in the same timing. Time doesn't exist, right? Because if they did, you'd be hearing me in real time. But that's why, we can't necessarily measure time. But, other than, we can't really use time other than to measure. So I feel like we are always playing with dimensions. We're always playing with them. Tarot is an old-fashioned dimension, or a portal, bunch of portals. The reason why I say this is because if you notice something, and I've noticed, I was thinking about this earlier this week, and I was thinking about how all of the suits have endings that are really nice except for swords. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And I was going down using what I would conceptualize as a string theory kind of method to understand why that was. And of course, it makes sense when you have cups, right? The more cups you have, that means the more love you have. The more pentacles you have, that means the more material, financial, things that are tangible, the things that make you feel stable are, right? Wands, the more passion you have, you start off with a little bit of, with one passion, you have tons of passions. Swords, you have one truth, and all the other truths become misconfuggled, horribly orchestrated, and eventually that truth kills you. And that is what brings me to string theory. It's like, because if you notice, guys, after 4, things start to get a little kooky. Things are like, in the beginning, it's fair, right? Ace of Swords got a new truth, don't know what to do with that truth. 2 of Swords, but you realize that there's some issues and some pains that haven't been really figured out yet, or, resolved. And now you take the time to resolve it. 4. But then 5 is kind of crazy. It's almost like after you had that breakdown, after you had that lapse, right, of realizing that, hey, the pain that you're kind of doing this to could have been resolved if you had just removed them. And then you just kind of like take your time, removing the swords, removing those, right? Removing every last sword that's in your heart. Then you take that break, you take that long rest. But time isn't measurable, right? So where does this time come from? Like, how long does it take for information to leave your brain and enter your brain. Crazy. Not gonna lie, the story of swords is actually triggering me in my life at this moment, mainly just because I've had something very similar to that experience happen to me on Christmas. Like, I had a breakdown. I let my emotions just kind of rush in, and barely 2 hours later, when I finally went to sleep, I got up and I felt refreshed. But the problem that I went into was the Five of Swords. And I didn't realize what I was doing, but I do know now, which was the Five of Swords, the guy that had the swords, the one that was taking the swords away from their friends, the people that they knew. I was that person with that sword because I was like, my truth matters. My truth means something. My truth is something that needs to be heard. And instead of putting it in a platform where everybody can absorb it or maybe put in their own opinions and be okay with it, I was like, no, this is it. This is the absolute truth. This is everything. But that's not everything. Not for everyone. So that's what the Five of Swords concept brings me back to string theory. Because even though string theory is just a theory, just the same as astrology works for very few people, right? They're just concepts that work for every individual person. And I feel like with the story that the swords are telling here is a story about string theory. Is a story about my theory, about who I am. And where I came from, right? Pretty much as far as where I came to be now. Everything winds back up to where it was left off. Why did I have this feeling of pushing this truth down everybody's throat? Because I didn't feel like I knew anything. Everything, all the pain that I had in my heart was blocking my senses to be able to detect whether or not information was resonated with me or not. Now that I got those swords out of the way and I took a rest, 2 hours rest, I'm wired, I'm amped up, I'm ready to go. And on top of that, ready to just be like, hey, next person, this is my truth. You should see my truth as facts. And I think that's where everybody probably goes wrong, where everybody has a truth and a concept like me. And instead of trying to be like, wow, this explains everything. This explains who I am. This explains exactly what I've been thinking every time I come up with a concept. Everything has a connection. Perhaps this is not to say that this is your fact to be spreading to the world. But this is more of a theory that can be expanded on to maybe find other people. Not to shove this truth down people's throats. Not to make people feel like they have to believe something. That they have to trust, they have to go along with what you're saying. Which is why even religion has a bad look right now. Because everybody feels like they have to do it. They have to do it. They have to listen. This is absolute fact. There's no disputing it. That's not the case. And I realize through this understanding that we do have our emotions wrapped up with our truth. We do. We have it wrapped up all the time. We either learn to work with it or we learn to disassociate from it, which is what I feel like the swords path is showing. Disassociation. Which is why when you get increasingly higher on the sword scale, you end up losing and looking like you're in a very, really, really terrible spot. So let's say, for instance, right, you notice that your truth isn't getting through to people. Your truth is not being absorbed as you like. So you go and try and change your identity and do something different. Six of Swords. And I know this is probably like a really negative way of reading it or seeing it like this. And I don't think that this is the only way you can view it. Please understand that this is based off of where I've come from and what I've been dealing with for like 3 weeks or 2 weeks. And this is not necessarily to like put anybody on the spot or make anybody feel bad, because this is not at all any sort of way to make anyone feel upset or anything like that. This is literally what I've come to understand about swords and how I haven't been doing my due diligence with providing a platform where I can be criticized, I can be asked questions. And I'm trying to understand why not only I'm doing this, but I've noticed other people doing this too. And it used to irk me when I used to go to work. I'm like, oh my God, this person thinks that this is the way things has to be, but it's not. It's not the only way. Like, there's people that came in, and I live in Colorado, and I am legally able to say this. I do actually, like, intake marijuana. I do that. The reason why I do that is because it helps me calm down. I'm not going to justify it. But there's some people here in the state that won't do that. They think it's terrible. They think it's beneath them. They think it's inferior. They think it's disgusting. They feel like it's trashing their city, trashing their home. And that's fair enough. Their opinions are fine. But I always felt like that was aggressive or this is not open. It's not open-minded. It's not taking in something new, which is what I was doing. I wasn't taking in anything new because I wasn't realizing that my approach isn't how it's supposed to be. Like, my approach isn't about everybody getting on the same page. We're not supposed to be on the same page. There's so many, you know how many theories that are out there, y'all? String theory ain't the only one. So to kind of be like, oh, this is the absolute way, it's like, no. So I noticed this in my day-to-day life, that everyone has a concept, has an idea, has a thing that makes them feel whole inside, a truth that makes them feel like, yes, this is representative of me, this is what I believe. It makes sense, but when we start to pervert it and make it like everyone should be that way, that's when we have issues like, you know, like religious conflicts, scientific conflicts, people not being able to understand, not able to trust media, because we're not sure if whether or not this truth is something that is real, or if this is something that is a subjective truth, and we all are being pushed to believe it. So, going down the whole swords journey, right? You travel, you go out, you know, you think about it, you're deepening your emotional connection with your truths, but then you pretty much turn into a totally different person with the Seven of Swords. Like, it's like night and day. And I was always trying to figure that out. Like, why is that the case? Why did that person change? Why does that energy shift from doing something courageous to doing something underhanded and sneaky? Well, what if this person lost themselves after they left? So they use ideas and concepts to disguise who they really are. Maybe who they really are, underneath that, is someone that had a realization, and they're taking advantage of that moment, or they're disguising themselves to hide underneath the illusions and ideas that other people would accept them to be. Now you're looking at truth of other people. Like, if you notice, he's taking swords that are not his, right? So that kind of gives me an implication that he's taking on ideas that don't belong to him. So he's cloaking or hiding himself, which is where we get the sneakiness from. Then we get the Eight of Swords, where he's caught up in the lies that he's been telling. He doesn't know which one is which. He knows he's fucked up because he can't remember which one is real. And the Nine of Swords, stressed out because he knows that what he said is all coming together. It's all getting closer. The anxiety's impacting. The lies are building up, and everybody's starting to connect the dots. These are not what they're supposed to be. They're not how they're supposed to look. This is not necessarily how I envisioned us realizing that this person wasn't a real person. And then we have 10, the death of the ego. Death of the truth. Or the absolute realization that your truths have consequences. Especially if they're adopted from other people that aren't necessarily clarified as somebody that has gotten concepts from other places. If you try to assume that you are the holier than thou, and have all this information already, you're missing out on the biggest, fundamental, exciting portion of being a human being, which is to learn. Expand yourself, get to know people that have different ideas, and see if those actually trigger something in here. And I'm talking about this as if I'm like, oh my God, people change. This is not how it's supposed to be. I was like that this entire week. I had an idea. I feel like everybody should know it. Everybody should be following along it. Like, it's like, oh my God, revolutionary. But it's not revolutionary to anybody but yourself. It's not revolutionary to anybody but me. And that's okay. Because that's not the point. The point is not to try and drill it down someone's throat. The point is to understand it and intellectual, like figure out why that applies to you, and make peace with that. I always feel like after 4 we fuck ourselves when it comes to the swords, because it's like, okay, what are you trying to do with this truth now? This truth is strictly something that is a marriage between you and it. When you try to combine or get other people involved, what are you trying to do? There's nothing wrong with sharing your point. There's nothing wrong with sharing your theory. There's nothing wrong with sharing a concept. But there is something wrong when you try to constantly berate people with it. Now, here's one I want to separate, because I do feel like this is constantly misconstrued. If you are passionate about it and that's 90% the only thing that you talk about, that's not drilling it through someone's head. I don't see that as that. The reason being is because you are living a life that you want to live. You are expressing yourself in the way you want to express yourself. If it is tarot, astrology, runes, video games, music, politics, it doesn't matter. Like, if that's all you talk about, then that's totally acceptable. You are totally allowed to talk about it. And even if people get annoyed with you, that doesn't matter, because they obviously are not getting something that you are getting out of that conversation, and therefore you shouldn't have to stop talking about it. If it is encroaching on other people's ability to communicate with you, and if it's the only way that people can communicate with you, then there may be some things that may need expanding. Not saying that there's anything wrong, but the expansion portion of it may need some work. Why is the only thing that you want to communicate just those things? There's so much more to life. And there's nothing wrong if you just like, no, I have no interest in anything else. And then that's acceptable, right? That's fine. Then that means that the people that come into your life are only going to be those people that want to talk to you about the thing that you want to talk about. And then you have to just accept that there's going to be a world where you're closed in, and you could find your way out if you want to. But the second we start making this like thing where if the other person isn't communicating about it, if they're not talking about it enough, then, or if they're not, like agreeing with this perspective, then it's like, okay, why do you need this person to agree with you? What is the real point? Like, why? Like, this is not important. It really isn't. Like, think about everything that you conceptualize. It's not important. It's not important to anybody else but yourself. There's nothing wrong with it being important to you. There's nothing wrong with it not being important to someone else. The problem where I feel like we interact, or where it kind of gets kind of crazy, is that when you need the other person to understand you, when you need the other person to say, hey, what you're saying makes sense. If it doesn't make sense to them, and you're not able to communicate it and explain it the way that you understand it, do you really understand it? But it's not necessarily an accusation, right? It's not an accusation. It's just food for thought. Do you truly know what you're talking about? Because if you do, why do you need the other person to understand it? Why don't you just show them? Why don't you just express it in a different way? But why do you need anyone to actually absorb and be interested in what you're having to say? And that brings it down to a little bit back to string theory. From what I've understood and looked up with people that have emotional disassociation, that are suffering from BPD or bipolar depression, they always look for opinions outside of themselves, mainly because they don't trust their judgment. They don't trust their judgment. They don't trust what they believe or see or think. Same thing, concept with the Three of Swords, right? Like, they don't get it. Like, they don't believe that they have enough credibility to have an opinion, or to be solely the source of what their opinion should be. And I honestly feel like everybody, in a way, they could use a different perspective, not to question whether or not they're not just to question whether or not the approach they go in is the absolute approach that they should be going into, but mostly to just kind of broaden that world, but that's just my opinion. Some people don't need a broader opinion. Some people just need a closed source of information. But the point that I'm trying to make is that we already have that situation. I mean, with string theory, it all connects back down to one thing: the lack of self-esteem, lack of realizing who we are, the lack of realizing that we are enough as is, to ourselves, not to other people, to ourselves. And when we don't have that kind of understanding with ourselves, it's very easy to get sucked into a web of opinion nets, like just a bunch of opinions, bunch of theories, bunch of ideas that people trust themselves to thoroughly either learn or, you know, eventually change. And that kind of umbrella kind of can lead to a disconnect with the water and yourself, your emotions and yourself. And that's with looking at string theory and using that technique, that method of connecting back to an origin, to an original source. It kind of gives me the feeling that whenever somebody wants to ask a question about something and get someone's opinion, there is some sort of like, well, this is somebody telling me how to live my life. This is someone telling me how I should be doing things. When it's not actually, it's none of that. It's none of that. And when we do that, we honestly give up our power, and we ultimately start blaming people for decisions that we have made because we had went out of our way to ask. So what does this all bring us back down to? Right? String theories brought us back to emotional disassociation when it comes to asking for people's opinions. And it's not a bad thing, right? The emotional disassociation does not mean that you don't want to connect with yourself. No, when we ask questions about a certain opinion, it's not always the emotional disassociation. It can be that you just truly want to get a different perspective and see what other people do. But when we actually are looking for another person's perspective to kind of give us a guideline as to what we're doing, then is that really opening our eyes or incorporating a new concept or allowing ourselves to think on our own, but actually have different concepts to compare with, to figure out what resonates with our heart? No. It's emotional. I feel like what it goes down to is emotional disassociation. And that emotional dissociation means that you're not in touch with your heart. You're not in touch with feeling your intuition. You're not in touch with trusting your intuition at all. Like, your intuition is on hiatus. So then a fact, a theory, a truth becomes the predominant character in your life, instead of it like enhancing it and enriching it with other concepts and theories. So it's not just one way of doing things. There's so many different ways to do it. There's so many different ways to expand and explore, to open our minds and to broaden them. But what I want to understand is that is why some of us, including me, feel compelled to not only ask people their opinion, but to use that as a source of universal truth and act like that is the way it's supposed to go. And then why do people like me expect other people to see their truth, their belief system, and take that as something that they should be treating it as truth? No. That's not how we grow. Like, nothing grows like that. Think about it. Like, let's just think about it. If we never, like, for instance, plants do this all the time. They allow us to crossbreed. They allow us to create alternate vegetables, so that way we can we can expand our food. Right? That expansion. Plants are open and available for us to manipulate. Not saying we should do that, but it is something that we can do, because a plant has that concept of, no matter where I am, I know who I am, and the combination of anything doesn't deter me from being myself. It doesn't mean that I'm still not me. I'm a different version of myself. Because I evolve. We evolve. We're human beings. We evolve. If string theory ties us all the way back to being a plant, we have that capability in us to be able to do it and think it and all these things. We have all that. But that's a theory. If you don't believe in reincarnation, if you don't believe in string theory, if you don't believe in anything that ties you back, then this means nothing. And that's okay. Because maybe we need a perspective that says, hey, we didn't come from shit. We came from God, and we came from dust and dirt and whatever. And we are an image of him. We are image of what is holy. That's totally cool too. But at the same time, was the Five of Swords also indicating to you that not only is someone trying to drill down of truth in someone's brain or trying to accept other people's truth as fact, but could it be that somebody was ignoring information? no longer asking questions, believing that their truth is the truth, and no longer allowing themselves to be open to different perspective, well, then why would they move? Why would they change? Why would they go out of their way to travel across, waters that they've never probably sailed before to a different world? Well, Seven of Swords means to lie, to disguise, to hide a truth, right? It can be, or to be sneaky, or to plan something, without communicating it with everyone. That's kind of the key words for the seventh house, the Seven of Swords. But what if the Seven of Swords was that this person showed their true colors, not really wanting to be their individual self, and people found out that who you really are isn't who you really are. You're still lying. You know who you are, but you're still lying. You're still not being yourself. So you've traveled to a different world, and then you end up being a version of yourself that you've never been before. A thief, a con artist, someone that's calculating, someone that's always thinking on their feet. But then you get stressed with 8, and then you get even more stressed with 9. Like, I feel like, in a way, with that portal jump, that tells us the scenario where swords didn't work. Everything else, every other suit in this tarot, they all had really good endings. 10 of Pentacles, you got your family, riches, everything's grand. 10 of Cups, you have your family with you, you feel happy, you have people that you can enjoy with. Excellent. 10 of Wands. That one is a little weird, but at least it kind of shows a bit of pride in my in my opinion. Someone willingly carrying all their passion with all their might and not giving up. Even when they were tired, they still didn't give up. But then we got the Swords, and we die in the Swords. Was it because we try to take methods and make them truth? Perspectives and make them truth? Make them a religion? Make them something that was enforced rather than understood? And if that's the case, look at where we're going with SJW stuff. And the thing that was happening with Canada with legislation, right? And the languages, like making people say pronouns that they have no idea that they're needing pronouns for. Like, that's the road that we're going in. The Swords, where at the very end, we're all going to end up dead because we are forcing a certain truth onto everybody. And not everybody resonates with that truth. And it's okay. We don't need them to, because it's not the point. Right? The point of expressing emotion, expressing ideas, expressing thought is to share it and expand our knowledge, not to make sure that people are staying inside of a guideline, not to make sure that people are staying within some sort of bubble, because we don't honestly want people in the same bubble. I don't personally want everybody to be in the same bubble because I won't learn anything. I live on this planet to learn. I live on this planet to receive. I live on this planet to also give. But what I give should not be something that has to be taken. What I give should, and in my opinion, if this is where we're wanting to be, is coming from a place of ultimate love, which in my eyes is unconditional, I should be able to put my food out there. Let's say we're at a potluck. Put my food out there and nobody wanted to touch it. That's okay. It doesn't mean that what I did, what anybody else was doing was wrong. What I put on the table at that potluck meant that nobody needed to have it. Nobody wanted to have it. That doesn't mean that it's something I should learn to accept. No longer sharing my opinion. No longer sharing my, expressing myself. We have to figure out why we are so connected to the things that we do that we offer up to the world. Why are we emotionally attached to something that we offer up to the world? Not saying that we shouldn't be, but if this is the reaction that we get, which is like bitterness, or again, further disassociation with ourselves because people reject us indirectly, or they have something that they don't want us to, want to do with us. Are we taking it, is this taking it serious? Taking it beyond the point it's supposed to, which is just sharing, if someone wants to take it up? And then 2, are we being conducive to our growth whenever we have a reaction to something that happens like that? I'm not going to lie to you guys. I've been rejected 90% of my life. I've been rejected a lot, but I have also been accepted too. We have a choice to look at rejection and acceptance in a lot of different ways. We can see it as a way to grow, to expand, to get better, or we can take the rejection, get pissy, and work harder, so that way we end up getting even more rejected and then ultimately losing ourselves because of what we're doing. What we're trying to do is get something from someone else when we can get it ourselves. Which also then will blur the lines whether or not needs exist. That's where I'm at right now. Do needs exist? Do I need to have needs? Or do I have needs that ultimately tell me the status of something and if it's something that's worth continuing, if that makes sense? Does my having needs determine a boundary? I don't know. Which is why I use the tarot for half of this stuff, because I don't know. But the tarot will tell me. Why do I believe the tarot will tell me? Because there is no bias. I can shuffle like 65 different ways and it'll still tell me probably the same story 3 different times with several different cards. There's a reason why there's multiple cards in here that say or mean the same thing or close to it. And you're probably thinking, that's a contradiction. Why are we even using tarot? Simple. Because you are not putting your shit in it. And I hate to say, and I'm not saying it like you're the reason why something is tainted. That's not what I mean. But what I am saying, though, is that we don't have to calculate or put together something in our heads to figure out the problem. We can literally allow our spirit or allow ourselves to run across an idea with the tarot. The tarot only randomizes an idea concept. Like, it creates a structure and we look at it and go, could this be our situation? Does this resonate? Why doesn't it resonate? If it doesn't resonate, if it does resonate, what is the process in which I should be trying to go forth? And that usually is left for you to decide. The tarot will only give you an idea as to what could potentially lead you to where you want to be, which is why emotion is so important, which is why knowing what you want or knowing what you are wanting to feel is important. Because, like I said, these are just portals. Like, to me, these are just portals. These are just energies that correlate to what I want to feel. The second we start saying, well, I want money, when's the next time we're going to get money? Simple happens. 9 of Wands. Good luck. Energy. You're going to get a card talking about energy. The reason why people have a hard time, at least when they call me and talk to me and ask me when they're going to have a baby, when they're going to get paid, when they're going to do all these things, is because these are not energies. These are our expectations. And expectations, yes, they have an emotion behind them, but it's usually an emotion filled or emotion that actually is lacking. There's something that's lacking. And so, with that understanding of with what tarot is to me, which is why I don't really ever use it, because I don't know what I want to feel half the time. For myself, I use it for everybody else, but I don't use it for myself. The reason being is because I don't know what I want to feel. That I can't give myself. That I know I can give myself. Like, chasing my tail a million times is not going to fix the problem. It never has. But when I have, and when I will use the tarot for in the future, especially when it comes to people that I read for professionally and the clients, it has to be based off an emotion for me. Because that's something I can truly understand. I can truly understand vibration and emotion. I can truly understand the energy in which someone's trying to communicate with me. I can understand that. I don't understand that for myself yet, but I can understand it. Which is why, crazy enough, after Christmas, I've been so stickler to definitions. Because anything that diverts from the definition means that there's something else that's trying to be conveyed with a word that's not actually appropriately used. So when people ask me, what do I feel about a word, or what does that mean to me? And it's like, I feel like it misses the point of what I'm trying to do, which is truly understanding people. But I also missed the point as well with that question of The point is, do I have some sort of emotional connection with that? And what does it say to you? But then that's where we blur the lines. That's when things get confusing for me. That's when things kind of like, whoa. Should we be using methods to understand each other, or should we be using methods to confuse each other by using methods that truly aren't meant to be used for certain things? Like, I'm not going to go outside and use math to drive. Not really. Like, yes, turn the wheel 360 degrees. You could do that. To turn left, turn right. You push the gas pedal down about 45 degrees. Get a little gas going, not going super fast, but slamming it all the way down, all the way 90, or all the way 180. You're just doing a little bit of 45-degree angle. That's a little bit of math, but you're not intentionally going to go x equals 2y, blah, 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 blah. That method of use is not necessarily going to get you anywhere. Like, you can sit there and go, how come I'm not at my doctor's appointment? Well, probably because you're doing math. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Hi. But yes. So it's like, so that's where like the needs, methods, logical structures being used to prove something to be right when it's not the purpose. But the string theory that I was talking about originally is basically along those lines. What conceptualizes, or what makes a theory fact? What makes a fact theory? Or what makes what makes a fact theory mean? What makes a fact about yourself theory? Well, simple, because it's anecdotal. It's something that you can prove only with yourself, which is why it's given the theory. And the beauty of it being theory is that you don't have to worry about it necessarily being told that is incorrect. Because I think one of the things that we kind of get stuck in our minds is what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's black and white. And theory allows us to accept that there's an idea out there that could be true, but may not be true, and it doesn't necessarily matter until it's proven otherwise. We are theorists, all of us, everyone watching. We're all theorists. We're all scientists. We're all spiritual. And a lot of us think, I believe in science. I'm atheist. I am not spiritual. Fair enough. Then you are a man of science or a woman of science, and therefore your perspectives have a lot to do with the theories that science can prove. Again, encompassing back to what I was saying about all of us having ideas that are valid and worth hearing, but not necessarily preached about like it's gospel, not like it's scientific truth, because we have no evidence. Until then, we can still talk about it. I guess the best thing to kind of leave this episode on is like, especially something to think about for the next coming week, which would be, what is your intention with your information about yourself? What do you like? If there's anything that's come up about you, special about you, and you want to share that with the world, and you feel like no one's listening, you feel like everybody's just kind of telling you where you're wrong, but you also know that no one's telling you where you're wrong, they're just showing you that your truth is about you. What is your intention with that now? What is your intention with the understanding of yourself? Are you going to share it? Are you going to keep that private and sacred because you see this as something personal and you don't want to ruin the sacred ground? Do you believe this is a theory that you can share with everybody? You could talk about on forums. Do you believe this is fact and this is something that everybody should be following? And if it's that truth, and as a matter of fact, if it's any of those, why? Because either way, they're not wrong answers. We have to understand why. But the why always gets us back to who we are. How? Because if we understand why we're doing something, of why there's an intention behind something, we'll understand what we're trying to obtain with the intended projection. And it can be hard, trust me, but it's totally worth it, and it saves you the trip of feeling like you don't have any sort of sense about you. because you trust me, you do. It's just about how you convey it, why you're conveying it, and if conveying it really truly matters to you, whether or not you get it or not, if that makes sense. Like, so what I mean is that, like, when you express it or trying to explain it to other people, when you express your truth and your theory to other people, and you want them to take it as truth, is it because there's something inside you that needs that other person's opinion? That we were talking about remember earlier today, we were talking about other people's opinions. Do you need that other person's opinion to validate it? And then when that person says, I don't agree, does that mean that we turn into the Five of Swords and get rude, get nasty, get dominant, and get territorial about our truth? Because then at that point, why did you ask the person in the first place, right? What was your real intention? If someone disagrees with your theory, why is that bad? Because that allows you, if you think about it, if you look at it a different perspective, it allows you to see it from a different angle. Allows you to see where it does further resonate with you, but how it truly doesn't resonate with someone else. And I know it's weird and it's totally selfish to say this, but we are not on this earth necessarily to share our points to save each other. We're on this planet to save ourselves. And I know it sounds cold and detached, but it's not. Because when we don't have the invested effort to try to bring everyone into a circle, we can truly help everyone. Because the intention isn't about making someone do something against their will. It's about welcoming them in if they do find some sort of understanding between themselves, which is all we want anyway. We want people to feel whole within themselves, not whole within a group, because that doesn't matter. If you're whole within yourself, you're good. If you're not, that's something that may or may not, create solid relationships and friendships. And that's okay. That person needs more time alone. That person may need some more time to consider that their points of views are valuable, but they don't necessarily mean anything other than to that person because it impacts them the most. Everyone thinks and feels this differently. It doesn't have to be the same. But when we tell somebody that they're wrong, or judge the way that they think, or assume that the way that they're projecting their opinions, or not absorbing our opinions, is a wrong or bad or whatever way, or speaks of something else, we miss the point of ultimately what we're here to do is understand each other, or not, so we can understand ourselves. That's it. We are here to bring ourselves to the table and understand what we need to say about ourselves, what we need to feel about ourselves, but not to push that onto anybody else. Not to push the ideology on someone else. Not to make someone feel like if they don't get a concept, they're an idiot. Because you're not. That concept, that idea, that theory is a theory for a reason. Because it works for some people and it don't work for others. And when we do play in that kind of playground where everybody's different and everybody's authentic, be able to actually see who we all are and identify how we can all help each other truly, instead of using the universal methods of showing that you care, which don't really work. So let me go ahead and quickly pull a card for all of us guys this week. I'm going to be using the Sacred Destiny. Actually, I'm going to use two cards. I'm going to use Sacred Destiny. I'm going to be using also the Black Moon Astrology card because, you know me, I am an astrologer and I do love my astrology. We're going to pull this one first. I am. Okay, interesting. I am. Aries came out. Oh, okay. The first house. Yo, I mean, we getting first house energy like crazy. We got Aries fell out by itself. Y'all saw that. I am. And then first house. Crazy. First house. So let's go ahead and see why that first house energy is coming up. The body. So if anybody else is having body issues or body reflection issues right now, or having a lot of emphasis on what's being displayed or presented or what's being seen, like pretty much what I was talking about with string theory this week, like with today. Like, if you're trying to get an opinion certified or verified by people that you can trust your opinion with, why are you doing that? Because it's not necessarily, like, that's not what opinions are you supposed to be used for. You're not supposed to use that as a way to necessarily decide whether or not something is good or bad without knowing what you want, what feels right for you. Like, for instance, if you go out and reach out to somebody to, like, say, I feel like putting salt in my eggs, but I'm not sure. And this other person goes, no, don't put salt in your eggs. It's disgusting. Not only is that, but it's going to raise your blood sugar. It's going to raise your blood pressure and other things. Actually, I know someone, actually, a Aquarian insight, actually. There was people that always told her, or told people, like, she was in situations where other people may have, like, expressed to her some things that she may need to do, but not necessarily fit the criteria in which she needed it. I know I'm going to just speak for myself. Every time I was told that the reason why my mental issues were false was because something was wrong with my body, something needed to be cleaned out, or something needed to be fixed, I always took offense to that, because I knew that I was doing everything I could health-wise, but my mind was still not right. But I took that as truth because I trusted the source it was coming from. Should I have done that? Who knows? It wouldn't have probably brought me here. But I'm glad I'm here. But I know now that when someone, especially I speak this at an old job, my old job, something happened, something was missing, and I was told that I lost it, and I took that as truth when I didn't lose anything. Should I have taken that person's opinion as fact, or just seen that as, okay, that is a different portal, that is a different dimension? Why is that dimension telling me this? Not necessarily saying that these people are only portals or dimensions, because we don't want to disassociate people. We don't want to make people feel like they don't have any sort of existence, or at all. They're just like little holes of information. That's not what they are. People are much more than that. But when we do take that kind of opinion, and we do recognize this as, okay, this is a different perspective that I didn't see, why is it happening? It's deeper than that, especially when you know that information isn't correct. That's why I'm so stickler on definitions, because if something is diverting the real meaning of something that's been given, like the default, because I'm gonna just be honest, right? I see 12 signs. See 12 signs as the default energies. Like, there's, like, they can be blended, twisted, and reconfigured in so many different ways that it's not recognized, and that's fine. But it's the basis of it is to understand the meaning of it. So when someone is diverting from the original definition, they're saying something else. They're communicating to you something else. There's something else there. And it could be something spiritual, something deeper, something emotional, or it could be something physical. But in that regard, like, with that example of that person telling me that I lost something when I knew I didn't, and I remembered I didn't, and all these things, when I knew those things were true, there was something deeper with what she was saying, that I messed up, or I missed something, I forgot something, I didn't do something. There's something in me telling me something I did not do. There is always a message that happens for all of us. It's internal. You didn't do anything, V. I was just talking about how, like, there's people in life that show, like, express how they love us by usually telling us what to do or how we should do something, and that's not always the case. That's not the way. That's not how it works at all. When it comes to showing people love and support and care, you don't do it by pushing your truth of what care means. It's about understanding the other person to be able to give them what they see and understand as love and care. Because when you give them love and care, that is your love and care, is that really love and care for them? Are you really being able to convey your message? But here's what we got for the tarot. We have first house, the body, and the emperor. Taking control, taking power, taking action. But then I wanted to pull the Sacred Destiny Oracle. Ooh, we got two cards. So we have, I was going to put them back, but shoot. We have community and we have freedom. Basically, the two cards that I was talking about earlier. Let's see if I want to make sure everybody can see those words. All right. Make sure everybody can see that. Freedom and community. We don't have freedom if we continue to control what people consume, could think, and feel. We have to literally be the living examples of what we believe is truth. Not to prove that what we believe is true, but that this method, this approach to life, this attitude in which we put our heads first in everything that we do, can help everyone. But that's not the point. The point isn't necessarily about, hey, pick this theory, it's going to work for you. It's about living by your theory. Just live it. Just live by your theory. If you believe your theory is correct, you don't need anybody to understand it. You just need to live it. You just need to be it. That is true freedom. That is true connection of community. When everyone is accepted for what they feel, believe, and think. Not what everyone has a common ground on. Like, yes, as long as we get our fundamentals correct. Yes, as long as we share our points correctly. Yes, as long as we are respectful of the reciprocation of that information. Sure, great, grand. But when we lose the point of trying to push our theory, our idea, our perspective on other people to say that if you do not do this, if you do not see this, if you don't believe this, if you don't feel or think this, something is wrong with you, then you lose the sense of community. You bastardize freedom. You would call it democracy when it's not that. You take control of people and you lose sight of who you really are. Aries, I am. You don't have that no more. Everything gets broken. If you just live the truth and belief that you have and don't project that onto other people as in you need to believe this or we can't be anything further, the Ten of Swords don't play. The Ten of Swords don't play. And it's not a threat. It's totally something that everybody's aware of. Everybody's aware of what could happen if they don't allow, if they allow themselves the freedom to think, but not allow the freedom for others to think. We all know what happens. It happens a million times. It happened in history. Caesar. That's where the concept of the Ten of Swords even came from. The point of control is not is not to overtake people. It's not to conquer. It's not to take. Because what we end up doing is taking from ourselves when we take from others. What can we give in this situation, guys? What can we give? But that does conclude my episode for today about string theory. I know it had nothing to do really with, it had some concepts to do with string theory, but the point of it is that it's just a theory. It's not to say that you need to think or believe or see things that my way. And when we bring up theories, we bring it up because we find an interest in it, and we hope other people that may be going through something like this, may be going through something similar. And what we're doing nowadays with SJWs, with the way we do politics, the way we even see each other in the States right now, like, it's not only is it like totally feels like it's against the whole thing of being an American, but it's also making us un-American at the same time. It's making us so divided. It's scary. Like when I go outside, I shouldn't feel like everyone's public enemy number one. I shouldn't feel like someone's going to want to shoot me because they're having a bad day. I shouldn't feel like somebody needs help and I can't help them because I'm struggling too. I shouldn't feel like I can't communicate with my peers, the people that that are my country mates. I don't want to feel like something might happen if I bring up an idea or a perspective with my people, with people that are in my nation. If I can do that with people that are not of my nation, why can't I do that with people in my nation? Why can't I do that with people in my continent? Why can't I do that with people that are really, like, literally right next to me? Have we gone so far to the point where we cannot even exceed each other as brother and sister anymore, as countrymates, as fellow Americans? I've got people from England I am closely connected to that truly love to hear me out, and I love to hear them out. I have people that I know in Africa that, like, they are very intelligent. They're very involved in their world, but they are also accepting of different perspectives because they don't have very much of that. That doesn't mean that that's all they ever do. All Africans go out and seek different perspectives because they don't have it. No, that's not the case. But this individual that I have met, he was very open. But he didn't think that his way of life was bad. It was just difficult, and it could be easier. And he's seeking theories to make that truth so. That's the beauty of ideas, fam. And honestly, if we just remember that an idea is an idea that can be explored or not, without really any commitment to it, we'll be fine. We just got to stop pushing our thoughts on others, and we need to stop accepting other people's as if it's truth. We need to come up with our own ideas and question and ask questions. Romney Fire said it best I have ever heard. We need to ask more questions. V Aquarian Insight, she says this too. We need to be asking more questions. We all need to ask more questions, because we cannot keep assuming things, and we cannot keep expecting people to fall in line when there's no real herd to shepherd. All right, y'all. This has been Astrogem's talk show. I appreciate all y'all coming in, sitting with me, talking to me about this. This is something really passionate, something that's been going on with me for the last couple days, especially considering some diagnoses that I've received. But ultimately, everything is about love. Everything is about expansion. Everything is about understanding for me. And I'm glad that we could be here right now to expand, learn, and just share with each other. So, until next time, guys, I will see you on the other side. Take care, family. Bye, guys.